If I could only teach one yoga sutra for the rest of my life, it would be this one, Sutra 1.2 from Book 1, very second sutra. First we had, here is the teaching of yoga in Sutra 1. Now Sutra 2 is Chitta Vrtti Nirodha. Chitta Vrtti Nirodha. Can't wait to break it down with you. But first, I did make you a gift. I want to make sure you got it. I made a list of 8 essential sutras, and these are not the typical sutras that you will find in a Google search. These are sutras that I believe point you directly to the pointing of yoga, the pointing of liberation. So go ahead and download that. I'll leave a link in the description box below. But back to Sutra 1.2, Chitta Vrtti Nirodha. What does it mean? Well, it means that yoga is the cessation of thought waves. Okay? And I love that Satchidananda, who offered a commentary on the Yoga Sutras, writes that for the keen student, they need not read on. And that's because all of the other sutras are basically existing to describe this one and to instruct you how to do what is being recommended in this one, how to cease the waves of thought in the mind field. Okay, so let's actually break this one down. Chitta. What is chitta? Many of you know that chitta is the mind, or you could think of it as the field of the mind. In the yogic way of thinking, it's broken down into 3 distinct components. And it's good to know, I think, that these components move from the densest to the subtlest. So let's actually start with the subtlest. Now you can imagine that, let's say, all that exists is the soul, or all that exists is consciousness. But consciousness wants an experience of itself. It wants an experience of life. So the first thing that enters into the mind field anyway is buddhi. Buddhi is discernment or intellect or awareness. It is the subtlest form of the mind or component of the mind because it is the closest to the awareness that is akin to the awareness of the soul. Okay? Now, buddhi gives rise to the ability to discern, to evaluate, to judge, to create hierarchies. And Edwin Bryant points out that it also creates the impetus toward will. So it's incredibly important, and you can see how that would serve you in a positive way. And you might also see, let's say, if you're engaging in judging thoughts or critical thoughts or directed to someone else or to yourself, that this would keep you in suffering. So buddhi is the first layer. Second layer is ahamkara. Ahamkara. And that is the I. Okay. This is your sense of separateness. So I like to give the example of like a baseball, right? Like let's say somebody hits an errant baseball and it's coming into your field. Buddhi says, oh, I think that's a baseball and it's coming pretty quickly. And ahamkara says, oh shit, that baseball is coming toward me. Okay? So me as a distinct and separate being. Distinct from the inanimate objects around me, distinct from the energy field around me, distinct from other beings. So you can see how this too keeps you in a state of suffering. I think of ahamkara in the mind field as a kind of a veil. And that is because it keeps you in this sense that you are truly separate, which in the yogic way of thinking, we come to learn is an illusion ultimately. Let's go to the third component of the mind field, and that is manas. Manas. Manas gets translated as mind, but I like to think of it as it's like the reactive part of the field of the mind. So let's go back to the baseball example. The baseball example is Okay, buddhi recognizes there's a big ball, it's flying toward me. Ahamkara says, oh my gosh, yeah, it's flying toward me and I'm the one who's going to get hurt and get hit. And then manas says, like, who's that a-hole who hit that ball toward me? Or like, oh no, I'm going to get bruised. This is going to be terrible. I'm going to remember this for a long time. Maybe I'll even hold a grudge about it. So manas is connected, and this is important, is connected to the sensory world. So let's say the baseball were to make contact, it would be manas that registers that contact. Manas is kind of like the mediator between the sensory world, the world of objects, senses, and emotions, and the higher fields of mind, or the higher components of mind. So manas would ultimately feed its information back to buddhi, and buddhi would play the role of deciding what must be done based on our current dharma, what must be done, what is the best course of action to take in response to this errant baseball, okay? And so manas is the heaviest. It's the densest. It keeps us, keeps our minds most bound to this material reality. Therefore, it keeps us in forgetfulness of who we truly are as the soul or the Purusha. So manas has a heaviness. I also think of it as having like kind of an alluring quality, because we get, I would say, almost like tempted. We get pulled in. We have an attraction to the material world and all of its color and all of its drama, its ups and downs. In a really tactile way, we will experience bodily emotion. You know, you could feel the emotion of anger as like a heat, or anxiety as a vibration with really high ups and downs and really fast and uncomfortable. And so all of that is related to manas, or manas is mediating that, is passing that information back again to the higher minds. And so now you see how all three together really keep us here in our forgetting state, because it is said that we are here not only as humans, we are here as souls. Okay? We are souls having a human experience. Now, let's keep moving on. Chitta Vrtti Nirodha. Vritti, many of you might already know. Vritti means basically like to turn. It's like the turnings of the mind. So if you were to imagine, I think this is the easiest visual, if you were to imagine the mind as just a lake, and let's say sometimes it can be incredibly serene, placid, glass-like, absolutely beautiful and calm, a perfect reflection of the sky above it, okay? Vrittis introduce that turbulence, the choppiness, the waves that come, the ripples, the whirlpools, and all of these can be thought of as turnings of your mind. And I just like to think of them as thoughts, thought waves or thoughts. All right, so Chitta Vrtti Nirodha. What are we to do with these thought waves? Well, Nirodha means like to terminate, to cease, to stop. So the project of the yogi then is to stop the thoughts. But that doesn't feel quite right, does it? Doesn't seem, I don't know, for me it doesn't ring true, and I've certainly found as a teacher that it's not like the best way, at least in this day and age. Maybe for some people it is. For my teaching, it feels best to kind of play with this idea a little bit. Because the directive to just stop thoughts can feel like a pretty tall order, almost an impossible order. And I want to encourage you to understand that the promise of the sutras, the promise of the yogic path, like ultimate enlightenment and liberation, is not for a select few special souls. It is for anyone who stumbles upon this path and decides to focus on it with a certain amount of determination. And so that means it's available to you. It's available to me, at least in theory. So what can we do with Nirodha? Well, I'd encourage us to imagine ourselves as like a little kid. Because I'd argue that actually this state of, I'll call it no mind, yoga chitta vritti nirodha, the state of no mind is actually quite a natural state for the human being. We experience these states when we're like in flow, when we're concentrating on one item that absorbs us entirely. Hey, I mean, sometimes my morning coffee and just like an intense focus on it is enough to focus the mind and still the mind quite a bit. But we're looking for a stage past just focus, as you'll see later in the sutras. Now I encourage you, let's go back to that example of being a child, okay? If you were lucky enough to have been a child who was able to experience at least some playful moments, you might have had an experience like this. So you're playing all morning and you reach a point where you're a little tuckered out and you just like lay down, right? You lay down in the grass, maybe under a tree. You're incredibly comfortable. It's like a 75-degree day or whatever is comfortable for your body. You're not even conscious of the temperature because it feels so good. You feel so natural. So you recline, you look up at the sky. It's a beautiful blue sky day, maybe with some puffy white clouds, and you observe the clouds as they pass. And in that moment, your mind gets quiet, and you have become an observer. And from that space of mind from which you perceive, you do not possess an age, you do not possess a gender, you don't even have in this moment preferences or distastes. You are not mired in memory, you're not recalling past events, you're not concerned about future events. You are fully and wholly here, observing the sky above you. And maybe that's a fleeting experience, but that's okay. That is the glimpse of yoga, the uniting, okay? That is a glimpse, and that's enough. And you'll see later in the sutras that they say once you arrive at those glimpses, you start to become vigilant. You want to begin to grow those little pockets of no mind. So I would love to know, have you and when have you experienced a pocket of no mind? What gets you there? And this isn't like to brag. We know that we're not on a pedestal just because we've experienced a moment of like silence and quiet in the interior landscape. But this is to show that we can all do this. And even better, we can all sort of tend to that garden of quiet and therefore engage in the project of true yoga. So I'd love to know, what is it that gets you into those moments of quiet? And to wrap this up, I'll offer you a contemplation and a meditation for this week if you'd like to engage. The contemplation to hold lightly in your heart is this. What if I took this sutra to heart? What if I really let this lead my life? What would that look like? What comes up? Okay, that's your contemplation. The meditation. I'll offer you this. Look for a 5-minute pocket. It doesn't have to be a 20-minute, hour-long, 2-hour-long pocket. This is a 5-minute pocket of time where you have invited relaxation into your life. Now, you might be busy. I have children, teenagers, a preschooler, someone we care for in the home who needs around-the-clock care. Making dinner, going grocery shopping, planning, working on a business, this and that. We are all busy, and that's why it's so important, especially as householders, to claim, to almost like fight for. That's okay, to fight for these 5-minute pockets. So I encourage you to take a 5-minute pocket at least once a day, but up to like 3, 4, 5 times a day if your time allows. And you want to be in a state of relaxation and a state of enjoyment. So that's it. That's the assignment. 5-minute pocket to be relaxed and to enjoy something like a cup of coffee or a cup of tea. Love to know how you do with that. Look forward to next time where we talk about Sutra 1.3, which sheds light on this sort of initial trifecta of the Yoga Sutras. And don't forget, I made that gift for you. It's the 8 essential Yoga Sutras I believe that point you as directly as possible, kind of like give you the shortcut to that path of enlightenment. All right. I'm so glad you're here. Stay in touch and be well.